Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and Shadows of Change is almost released. It releases on the 31st of August, but I'm already starting to look towards the future as my review is already done. The last of my content for this period is sorted, and I've been looking towards, well, what to expect in patch 5.5, and not only that, Thrones of Decay, the DLC that we're expecting at this point around December, because an educated guess would say 4 months between DLCs make a lot of sense, as the roadmap is 3 DLCs in advance. And the purpose of this video is actually more as an open letter to Creative Assembly rather than just a standard rant, and we're going to talk about a few things because I feel like this is fairly important, especially since we've seen a few things that were promised in patch 4.0 which, let's be honest, were kinda underwhelming. So let's discuss some key factors of patch 4.0 before anything else, and since patch 4.0 isn't part of paid content, I can talk about things a little bit more honestly than I can for, well, the actual Shadows of Change DLC, as that is subject to a review embargo. So free legendary hero, perfectly fine. I like A-Cold. Immortal Empire's achievements, yep, okay, they're not really that great. Race updates, Kislev actually did get some nice updates. Tzeentch was okay. Cathay is a questionable thing. Overall, they're decent, but they're kinda small. The general AI improvements, I've really not noticed too much. And the ongoing settlement battle improvements, well, let's be honest, it's nothing. It's literally just changing so the tickets are in the last point of a settlement rather than the last 2 points. It's not really great. It's not really a big change, and a lot of people were expecting a fix to, let's be honest, a very frankly bad siege system. Whereas in the Thrones of Decay cycle, we know to expect content for Nurgle, Empire, and the Dwarfs. 3 factions which, in all fairness, do need quite a little bit of help. Frankly, I would say that all 3 of those factions need a little bit more help than, say, Kislev and Cathay did. The updates for Kislev and Cathay, the base stuff in patch 4.0 isn't too bad. It definitely makes them a little bit better to play with, but Nurgle has been suffering pretty much since the release of Total War Warhammer 3, mostly because the faction is very, very different, very stylized and very fun to play, but also frustrating if you don't know how to micromanage that type of stuff. The Empire has been nothing but a punching bag lately, as more and more evil factions have been added into the Empire itself. Not gonna lie, I was actually very, very surprised when the Changeling featured in the Empire not once but in both campaigns. And then finally the Dwarfs, who have already received 2 reworks and yet still need a little bit more of a touch-up. The Empire's received 1, they do okay, but they do need to be diversified a little bit and made a little bit more fun rather than vanilla ice cream. When it comes to patch 5.0 so far, we know the following. We are getting a free legendary hero, likely, in a very educated guess, another Nurgle one, as it does seem like a lot of Chaos legendary heroes are coming. Hopefully I'm wrong here and it ends up being a Dwarf one, as the Dwarfs could do with a little bit of help. Then we're getting the Nemesis Crown, no context as to what that could actually be. We know that it's an item and it revolved around a 7th edition campaign, so it could very much be like the Sword of Cain. Not too hard to implement, I would say, but if they're putting it out there, it must be something kind of cool. And we're expecting race and legacy race updates. Not rework, it doesn't say rework here, so it's very likely that the races, all 3 of them involved here, legacy being the ones that are not from Warhammer 3, are going to get some changes, but nothing too out there. Which is where the concern comes in for me, so let's talk about a few different things here. Nurgle will likely get a small update, very similar to that of Cathay and Kislev and Tzeentch in Shadows of Change, mostly because, and a lot of modders have tested this, the best way to just fix up a lot of issues with Nurgle is either increase the tick-through ratio a little bit faster in terms of how quickly the buildings actually tick over to the next tier to be able to give you more troops, or slightly increase the income generated through certain means, so that way you're not stuck just with Nurglings, Nurglings, and Nurglings. It's something which you're going to see the most common of units, but it's, let's be honest, kind of frustrating, and whatever legendary lord that we do end up getting in Thrones of Decay, likely Tamukon, I don't want to jump too much into speculation here, but he's not going to, or any other Nurgle character, is not going to work as well with Nurglings. Kugath himself boosts them up quite well, which makes them quite more viable, so a little just bits of tweaks here and there will solve the issues that Nurgle currently has. It's mostly economy more than anything else. I am slightly optimistic, however, that whatever the new Nurgle faction is going to play quite drastically different, at least that's what I'm hoping for, because we've already had that with Shadows of Change. The Changeling, the newest Legendary Lord and Kairos, the one that dropped in the actual release of the game, are so drastically different, which means that we should, in theory, be able to expect that. I mean, I'm at least hoping so, if they're going to keep trying to do this whole €25 thing, and I imagine that this is going to be the standard. Yes, and a lot of people are a bit angry about that, and we'll talk about the price during the review, but I imagine that this is going to be the new price going forward. One extra addition here is that Nurgle does need to have a little bit of a rework on the bonuses provided by techs, because the reason why Kugav suffers so much at the moment is most of his tech gives you benefits for being in the Northern Chaos Wastes, and he is nowhere near that. Yes, it does kind of help by pushing Kugav to a different location, but the fact of the matter is, for future Nurgle characters, the same thing will happen, right? So it's better just to kind of fix that problem and be done with it. Alright, let's talk about the Empire, the faction which is the most popular in Total War Warhammer. We know this since Creative Assembly posted some stats a long time ago, and it can be assumed that they'll be the same thing, as they were the most popular for, like, every single game. Now, the Empire has been suffering ever since their launch in Immortal Empires, mostly because, well, they had to deal with Vlad, who's been getting slightly more aggressive every time that I've played. Every patch has made him a little bit more just wanting to relive the Vampire Wars. Due to player bias too, you also have issues with Kazrak, who will turn towards you. You've got issues with, well, Festus, who, yeah, it does kind of expand a little bit, which the more problems that come into the Empire, the worse it is, as the Empire suffers a lot from the whole Elector Count mechanic. When minor factions get destroyed in the Empire, it also affects you, and that can be a bit problematic. It can lead to civil war, which ends up, well, causing more issues towards you. Thankfully, the Changeling doesn't really destroy factions, but he does make them weaker by leeching money off them and so on, which again makes them weaker to deal against Festus, Kazrak, and also Vlad. Not talking about all the other issues, like for example, the Norskins, who do expand and start pushing their way down in. Daniel does that too. It's a bit of a slog. It's probably one of the more dangerous places in the Immortal Empires right now, which is kind of funny. The Empire is also a faction that out of all of them is missing the most stuff, so they're going to need the most attention, I think, and this is going to be a bit problematic seeing as DLCs aren't really introducing that many things, but we need a church mechanic, you know, a whole faith system, because the Empire is so diverse. We also need the Colleges of Magic to be more well represented. We need the last of the Wizard heroes, as we've seen the concept of the Gold Wizard in the art book for Warhammer 3, still nowhere to be found in game, and then obviously the Wizard Lords. Not only that, but like, you know, loads of Elector Counts and a few Knightly Orders here and there. Obviously the Empire is likely to get multiple DLCs in the future, it's something that makes a lot of sense, but yeah, they need some help now. Mechanically, when it comes into everything, what they need is a little bit of a refresh on how exactly the Elector Count mechanic works to kind of stop the constant threat of a civil war. There's only so much that a player can do. It's fine for those of you who, for example, have been playing for a long time now and are used to this system, but newer players are suffering, and it kind of is funny when you see the Empire as a recommended faction to start in the Immortal Empires. It's not a recommended faction. And then lastly, the Dwarfs. So the Dwarfs themselves have had 2 reworks so far, which, yeah, I mean, it's nice that they're getting attention, but it's never really been too thorough is the right word here. The first rework kind of made them a little bit less of a slog, and the second one kind of, well, it made them a lot better, let's be honest. You know, having rune magic implemented was actually something quite nice, as it really did bring them up to speed and give them a little bit of magic, right? It made them a little bit better in combat. How many of you have played Kairos and have suffered at the hands of Thoric Ironbrow? It's definitely a better push, and I wouldn't say there's anything too functionally wrong with the Dwarfs. In most cases, the most I hear about people is that the Dwarfs are boring, and I'm kind of inclined to agree, because the Dwarfs are very vanilla. They feel like a Total War historical faction more than anything else. I'm saying in terms of gameplay, not overall how the faction plays, because obviously there is a lot of guns and stuff like that. But a little bit of additions here and there, right? Where are the engineer guilds? Where are the guilds in general, just to flesh things out? Why don't they have, say for example, a different type of tech tree very similar to that of the Chaos Dwarfs, where they have multiple tiers, rather than the very kind of overwhelming giant tech tree that the Dwarfs do have. I believe they have the largest one of all the races. Something needs to be done to make them a little bit more enjoyable, just to bring the flavor in, right? I know Creative Assembly isn't too focused on like the Game 1 and Game 2 races, as obviously the big money makers are Cathay, Kislev, and maybe even the Mono Gods, and that's very understandable, but also bringing some quality of life upgrades could do a lot of wonders. We've seen very good reworks lately. The Wood Elf ones, the Beastmen ones, those were done in Game 2. The Warriors of Chaos rework is something incredibly amazing. I absolutely adore how the Warriors of Chaos play now in Game 3, thanks to Champions of Chaos, and we need the reworks to be more or less that style, that level of detail. And this is why I'm worried, not so much the DLC factions, as the DLC factions are likely to be quite unique in their own right. We've seen that with Shadows of Change, but the races as a whole need quite a bit of help, more so than Kislev, Cathay, and Tzeentch did, and they're being lumped in together. The problem is that since the updates for Kislev, Cathay, and Tzeentch haven't been that large, I'm a little bit concerned that there is not going to be enough time, developer time, and money being put into this to actually make it quite good. I'm not sure what's happening with Creative Assembly, but there needs to be either more devs put into the Warhammer project, or they need to actually fund it a little bit better. It does kind of feel like the team is severely underfunded in respect to other projects, which may or may not actually draw the attention of the Warhammer fans, as the Warhammer fans generally only want one thing. I'm pretty sure a lot of the Total War fans don't want hyenas. So this isn't really like calling out the devs and so on. Keep in mind that the Total War Warhammer devs are probably trying to do the best that they can actually do with limited resources, time, or funding. It's not their fault when something gets pushed out a little bit too early, like it's not their fault when someone makes a statement, which, yeah, I honestly just hope that Creative Assembly have learnt about the recent shitshow and have decided to improve things as further go on. I'm referring to management here, as again, the devs are not to blame for the situation. People have to take orders because that's unfortunately how, that's how jobs work, the management tell you to do this, you have to do this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. What I want to do here is just have a proper discussion regarding the situation, and I don't want to be negative about this. I want to look at things with a positive light because I want things to get better. Obviously, this is a game that I put many, many hours into, and if I'm starting to lose interest, I unfortunately just get a little bit of negativity in me, right? It's something that we all do. We're only human after all. But here, I just want for the best, and I really hope that Creative Assembly are listening to the fan base. They did say that they are listening to people. They asked for feedback and so on in one of the last recent blogs. But yeah, keep in mind that that could just be marketing speech, right? The higher-ups could have said, just put that out, it'll tide people over. But have a good day, everyone, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.